Welcome to today's web conference, U.S. Azure Partner Community Call for February, presented by Nick Johnson, National PTS for Microsoft. Nick, you now have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us today. If you tried to join us last week, you know we ran into some technical difficulties, and we do apologize for that. In the future, if you ever have any questions about something like that, feel free to look over at the Yammer group. We were trying to post messages out there as quickly as we could to let everybody know. So that's always a great way to stay in touch with us. On behalf of the National PTS team, thank you for investing an hour with us. We know that your time is valuable, so really appreciate it. I want to start us off with just a couple of quick announcements, take a tour of the community, and then we're going to get on to our main presentation from our guest speaker here. So. First thing I want to call out is if you live in the business side of the world and you're maybe in that business decision maker, you're driving a lot of those type of conversations. If you haven't yet received an invitation from Microsoft, feel free. This is kind of your invitation. We want you to join us at the Worldwide Partner Conference in July this summer in Orlando, Florida. And for the U.S. partners, we are going to have some really exclusive, fun activities. We're going to have an executive keynote specifically from our U.S. leadership team. Great opportunity to hear from them and what's going on in the world. I'm seeing notes that there may be some audio issues. Is that true? Or are you guys hearing me okay, Kim?
Okay, go ahead and let me do one thing.
Okay, I'm seeing some say they can hear
okay,
fine.
I think they can hear. I'll go ahead and unmute. Ladies and gentlemen, please mute your audio as we continue with the conference. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay. Sorry about that technical difficulty, folks. Hopefully we'll get that worked out. So, yeah, I want to invite you to WPC. And one of the really fun things we're actually going to do is on the day of our keynote that evening, we're going to have a celebration for U.S. partners at the Walt Disney World Resort. We're going to be at Epcot, and we're going to have some really, really fun things going on there for you. So exclusive access to some stuff that typically doesn't happen. So if you enjoy Disney World, you enjoy Orlando, please come join us. Great opportunity there. The other thing I want to call out is for those of you that live kind of in the technical side of the world, and I'm actually going to share my web browser and show this to you live here, so I'll give it just a second to load. But if you live in the technical side of the world, well, we want to encourage you to check out the Ignite conference, which is coming in May 4th through the 8th in Chicago. And if you're familiar with past technical conferences Microsoft has had, whether it's SharePoint or Exchange, TechEd, those have all been brought together under the umbrella of the Ignite conference. So we're going to bring more people. We're going to have a really, really deep bench of speakers who are going to come from all parts of Microsoft, including the product teams, including some of our field teams. And they're going to be there to talk about everything and anything technical that you're interested in. On the Azure side of the world, we're really excited already. I just looked here a few minutes ago. We've got 112 sessions specific just to Azure. So if you live in that technical space, you want to spend some time really learning from Microsoft experts, interacting with them, asking real-time questions, this is the place to be. If you happen to be someone who's out there working on a certification to maybe go towards a competency for your partner organization, this is another place that you can come. There's actually going to be a testing center there, I believe, where you're going to be able to take the tests, where you can learn from the Microsoft experts and go and interact and do some amazing stuff. So encourage you to check out the Ignite conference. Now, along with that, I want to pass along a special note for this audience. We're going to do some special stuff for the partner community at Ignite. So once you've gone out and registered, that's just through the normal process. But once you've gone and registered, feel free to reach out via Yammer. Just send a private message to myself or Jonathan Gardner or Frank Campisi. And just tell us, hey, I registered for Ignite, or here's some people on my team that I've registered. Give us just their name and their email if you're willing. And as we get closer to the conference, we will go ahead and let them know of some of the special things that we're going to host at the conference. There's going to be opportunities to hear from some people, sort of some special sessions. There's going to be opportunity to track with us and maybe earn some prizes and things like that. So not giving away a lot of details today, more to come, but if you have people that are interested, please send us their names so we can get them registered. And just a reminder that if you could put your phones on mute, if you've just joined us, we want to make sure that we have clear audio for everybody to hear. The last thing I want to share with the community is a question that we get all the time, which is, what's your roadmap for Azure? What's your roadmap for the cloud? What's your roadmap for things on Microsoft? Well, if you haven't yet seen it, we recently published what we call the Cloud Platform Roadmap site. And on this site, you can see new features that have been recently released, things that are in preview, things that are actually in development, and things that have been canceled. And this is a public-facing site, but as a partner, this is a great resource for you to be able to build up your knowledge, to go in and help have conversations with your customers, to get ideas about what's coming so you can be ready for it. I really encourage you to spend some time on this site. If there's things that you're not seeing or things that you are seeing that you really like or you have an idea about, there is a feedback link right in the sort of upper right-hand corner there in the blue box. It says give us feedback. Our product team is looking at that feedback site on a very regular basis. So if you haven't yet checked out the Cloud Platform Roadmap site, please take some time and do that. It's a really, really useful tool, and it should answer quite a few questions that we're seeing on a regular basis. So with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to our guest speaker today, Brian Redmond. And Brian is actually going to talk about some features in Azure that we've never explored before, Azure Media Services, and some of the opportunities there for you as partners to build out a part of the business that is a growing trend that maybe hasn't been explored before. So Brian, let me turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. And I'm going to get my slides shared out here. I just need to take over as presenter, and I will get this going here. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk with everybody today. As I said, my name is Brian Redmond. I'm an Azure technology specialist, and I really get the opportunity to talk to our customers on a regular basis about our cloud platform, in particular Azure, and some of the specialty workloads such as Azure Media Services. So I'm going to try to give you a flavor for what is the technology used for, what is it not used for, and some of the different implementations that we've seen with some of our customers. So I hope we can kind of educate people on everything that we're doing in this media platform. We're doing some very exciting things. If you watched the Super Bowl more recently, you might have noticed that you could actually watch the Super Bowl online, and that implementation was delivered using Azure Media Services. So it's a kind of behind-the-scenes technology that's a part of our cloud platform that we're pretty excited about, and so I want to give you guys a full understanding of what we can do with it, and hopefully it will enable some of the work that you're doing with some of our customers. Now, so when I talk about really Azure in general, it sounded like there was a wide mix of experience. Most folks had at least had some familiarity with Azure. This is one way to look at the Azure platform in general. You can do all kinds of different solutions within the cloud. You can deploy websites, you can run your code in Azure virtual machines, but we also have services that we've actually built into the cloud platform. There's solutions for big data to run Hadoop clusters in the cloud as a service so that you don't actually have to manage all of the underlying technology. And there's a lot of different solutions like that in Azure, including Azure Media Services. And so that's the point of why I bring this up. You can definitely pull building blocks from all of these different areas to build solutions with customers. In some cases, it actually is sort of full-fledged services that deliver solutions around things like media. And so Azure Media Services is just that. And I'll go through and kind of talk about all the different components you can use. The thing I like to point out, though, is when I'm talking about Azure Media Services, why would you use a cloud platform for something like media? And I always like to, when I'm talking about Azure, bring up the fact that we have this huge cloud infrastructure, that we're all over the world with a very substantial amount of capacity. We have 100 data centers, more than 100 data centers worldwide. We have one of the top 3 networks that we actually run and manage ourselves in the world. And really, this global infrastructure allows you to take advantage of media solutions, but use this extensive cloud platform. If you need the resources, we have them available, not just in your area, but all over the world. And this sort of infrastructure really becomes key as I talk about media solutions. When you think about media, a lot of us, our experience with media and technology is through, as a consumer. We watch something on Netflix, for example, and there was a big event. Everybody wanted to see it, and Netflix crashes, and all you hear about is social media and the fact that we couldn't watch whatever event that we wanted to watch. And so really having this cloud infrastructure to support whatever event that customers are doing becomes really critical. Now, what is going on in this sort of media craze, I guess? Well, Gartner tells us that streaming media is becoming more and more important in everything that we do. You know, I could actually say that this is somewhat conservative, that companies would stream more than 16 hours of video per worker per month. Obviously, we're used to doing training and things like that over video, but more and more when we're getting messages out from maybe the CEO, or we're having quarterly updates from various executives in the company, you know, it's no longer sufficient just to have a conference call or an audio environment. You know, people want that interactive feel, and video becomes a big part of that platform. But in general, video is not easy. Video essentially is a big capital investment required. You know, if I want to stream an event, let's say it's a company meeting to thousands of employees, it's very likely that I can't do that without a big capital investment, and I may only need that a few times a year. And so there's challenges associated with this sort of platform that really the cloud should be able to enable us to accomplish. So let's talk about what Azure Media Services is and kind of get into the details of it. Really, Azure Media Services is a platform. It's a set of components that I can build my media solution on top of. So instead of me actually having to kind of, you know, gather solutions to meet these different requirements, we have all of these things built into the platform, and then you can build your solutions on top of them. And so when I talk about the different components needed for a media solution, first of all, we're talking about cloud upload and storage. You're going to bring your media to the cloud and store it somewhere. Media is very big. It uses up a lot of space very quickly. You know, whether it's video that's recorded from events like this, or whether it's actually produced content with cameras and so forth. I not only want a place to store that's inexpensive, I may not want to use the SAN storage that I have in my current data center with all of this video, whether current or archived video. And so I can do that in the cloud at a very inexpensive price point, but I can also, with cloud storage, provide a high level of redundancy. Azure Storage, we already provide assured redundancy within the data centers, and you can even request to have your data geographically redundant and have it replicated to multiple data centers to provide not only redundancy but even availability due to disasters. And so that cloud upload and storage is a very critical component of working with media. Obviously, the next thing I'm going to do once I have my media in the cloud is we do something called encoding. And basically, if you're not a media expert or someone that works with media all the time, encoding is really the process of compressing the video, putting it in different forms for different devices to consume. Raw video is probably too big to maybe stream out to someone's mobile phone. I may need to encode the video in 720p for certain devices and 1080p for other devices. And so encoding is a great place to use the cloud. If you've ever encoded video on your laptop, you'll notice that the laptop gets really hot. You know, if you're taking, you know, maybe building your own sort of home video, you notice the amount of processing power that's needed to do something such as encoding. And so using the cloud for encoding, we can easily scale up and scale down the encoding resources needed by taking advantage of this big cloud infrastructure. And so we give you that capability to do the encoding in the cloud and basically submit encoding jobs. No matter how long they take, you can just kind of sit back and wait until that's completed. We have different levels of service offerings that we do there and how you scale that up and scale down, and I'll go into that in a bit. The next thing that we offer is packaging. And so packaging, the reason there's the concept of packaging is one of the hardest things we do with media streaming is the fact that we have to deliver it to so many different devices and platforms and browsers. This is one of the hardest things that any company has to face that's doing any kind of streaming video. Every device has a different packaging requirement. Even within, say, the Apple infrastructure, the browser that's on an iPad doesn't have the same packaging requirements as the browser on a Mac computer. And so we offer services to make this easier. We do some really interesting things around packaging. We take a single encoded media asset, and we can dynamically package that to different platforms. This is really unique to our platform to have that capability so that you don't have to store one copy of the video for every mobile device and every browser type out there in the world. We can dynamically package it on the fly and deliver it in the form that it needs to be delivered for the various uses. Really cool stuff there. We also mentioned indexing. So indexing is something where we actually can take the audio track that's a part of any video. We can actually just take audio or grab the audio out of a video that you've built, and we can basically transcribe the audio into text. And we can provide that text to all kinds of different uses. You could essentially build the transcript for people who read it that have any kind of hearing difficulty, or we can plug that into some sort of search engine and use it for some sort of search service internally. So maybe we have a bunch of video files and events, and we want to search for keywords. We have all these partner recordings, and we want to find all of the partner recordings that involve Azure. And it could actually not only record or return to us which videos have Azure in them, but can also tell us the exact millisecond or moment in the video where this actually was said. Really cool uses that we can build around that. The next important component of Azure Media Services is around content protection. Obviously, any kind of video that we're putting into the cloud, we want to secure it, and we want to have security as a big part of the solution. So there are encryption methods all throughout this entire sort of infrastructure and workflow. We can encrypt the media at rest in the cloud. We can encrypt the media as you're uploading it. And then as we stream it out, we have a couple different ways that we can provide encryption, whether it be more of a DRM-based solution. If I was a media company, I would want to use something like DRM, and maybe if someone's renting my content, I want to give them 30 days to watch it, things like that. We can do that within Azure Media Services with our PlayReady technology. And then we can also just use AES 128-bit encryption and encrypt the stream that we're streaming out to our users, and we actually have a key delivery service behind it that can make that process easier to manage, from an infrastructure standpoint. The next big component is around streaming, and so we actually offer both live streaming and on-demand streaming with Azure Media Services. So on-demand streaming is really a part of the rest of the workflow I've talked about here. If I've uploaded my media and encoded it, I now want to stream it out to my users that are going to watch it. And this is also something that's ideal for the cloud, where if I have 10 users, I maybe only need sort of one streaming server. But if I have thousands, I might need to scale that up temporarily and have hundreds of streaming servers. And essentially that's what we're providing here, streaming sort of as a service. It's not really a server, it's a streaming service where you have a guaranteed amount of bandwidth for each sort of increment of scale that you provide. And obviously you can just sort of pay for what you use here and decide how much streaming sort of power that you need. And we stream this content out, whether it be these on-demand assets that are encoded and waiting to be viewed by consumers, or we can do live streaming, and we can take live stream feeds in from various sources and use that same streaming infrastructure to stream it out for folks to watch. So really cool technology that we can do both of these together, and in fact they work in hand. So the live streaming actually automatically creates an on-demand archive of the video so that the live stream, if someone wasn't watching it live, can watch it on demand later. We also have our own CDN, or Content Delivery Network, and this is really all about efficiency, making sure that content can be delivered out to various remote network locations and be cached as large numbers of people are watching the video. And so we can integrate with our own Azure CDN, which can be used with Azure Media Services, or frankly any web-based solution where you need some sort of content delivery network in front of your web content. We can also integrate with existing CDNs, so some of our customers have an existing relationship with other CDN providers, and so Azure Media Services can easily be integrated with those as well. And the last building block or component of Azure Media Services that we can take advantage of here is around player clients. So in many cases the player client might just be a browser, and so there are various browser platforms that we would work within the existing platform to to provide a player client. In many cases, this may be apps that are being built for various platforms, whether that be phone and mobile platforms, whether that be Xbox-type gaming devices. We have customers that are building applications that actually are delivered to these different platforms that not just provide a window with a video in it, but often has some sort of overlay and additional content. And we provide frameworks for our customers to build these clients, as well as sort of universal players that work on typical kind of platforms, depending on where they're being delivered. A lot of different ways to deliver this video content that we're storing in the cloud out to all the different devices and environments that we need to get it to. So this is the overall sort of picture of what Azure Media Services is. We really have customers who, in many cases, pull all of these things together and build a complete solution around them. And then we have some customers that are taking advantage of single components. You know, maybe I just want to use Microsoft's Azure Cloud to encode my video, and I'm actually going to pull it back into my internal network and stream it in my own fashion. And that's also possible. So it gives you that ability to really grab components and use them where you would want. We have had a ton of success. You know, if you hadn't really heard of Azure Media Services that much in the past, as I mentioned, we streamed the Super Bowl very recently using Azure Media Services. We've done a lot of work with NBC Sports, and you can find some interesting case studies about some of the work that we've done there. So again, this technology is often sort of working in the background and doing some really exciting consumer-based media and entertainment work. We have some things going on with NASCAR where they're streaming NASCAR races on a regular basis using Azure Media Services. And we even have some new case studies that are coming out, some new companies that are creating businesses around Azure Media Services. There's a company that's just now launching called Next Generation Sports Network. And this company decided that the popularity of soccer worldwide, really, I guess as they would call it, football, was really too big, and it's very difficult to get all of those games in front of all of the users across the world. And they really wanted to launch a company that would stream that content just using the internet. So they don't have a traditional infrastructure to deliver those games over television or traditional methods. And so NGSN actually built their company around Azure Media Services, and they'll be launching this service globally to anyone who really has an internet connection. So all kinds of exciting stuff we've done with the platform, including, again, I mentioned the Super Bowl. The FIFA World Cup was powered by Azure Media Services. This was one of the largest media events watched by any sort of one set of people at any given time. So pretty exciting stuff that we've done with the platform across over time. So I want to kind of dig into some other, that, you know, it's not just about sort of consumer-based solutions. I mean, in many cases, those are the ones we hear about the most. But where else does Azure Media Services fit in? You know, I would say the most common discussion that I have around video is around sort of portals for the enterprise. You know, sometimes people call it enterprise YouTube. Essentially, I have video that is created by, you know, maybe any department or division in my company. They want to create a series of channels. Maybe they're training. Maybe it's compliance video, CEO, town hall type events. And we want a way for employees to quickly kind of find most popular content, you know, potentially have a social discussion around that, and watch certain channels and things that are important to them. Another sort of big area that media services can play into is around marketing and advertising, whether that's digital signage in a retail type of environment, or if it's even just in an e-commerce sort of model. I know when I'm, you know, doing online shopping, I'm seeing more and more video explaining the product. You know, not just someone, you know, just a moving version of the item, but actually someone standing there talking about the product, explaining what it is. And we do also have a good amount of just sort of general internal video distribution, you know, companies that are building video for trade shows, exchanging video with partners that they work with. And so there's a lot of need around having solutions for general sort of internal video distribution, either cross-company or within the company as well. So one of the first solutions that that we might first think of when we talk about portals for the enterprise is we have a portal for the enterprise at Microsoft in SharePoint and Office 365. And so for those that are already working with something like Office 365, you may have heard about Office 365 Video. And essentially what we've done here is we've taken advantage of our Office 365 platform in SharePoint Online and basically plugged in the power of Azure Media Services behind that to deliver this Office 365 Video solution. And so for customers that essentially want a simple sort of solution to be able to have video available and easily consumed by users in a portal that they're already sort of familiar with, maybe they're already collaborating on all kinds of other content, wouldn't it be great if we could provide that same sort of experience from a video standpoint? So we give them that modern portal. It is mobile by design. Essentially everything is in that one place, built on top of SharePoint Online. And when the moment where we need to encode video or stream video or do any of those tasks, we turn that over to Azure Media Services. And we still take advantage of all of the other solutions that are a part of SharePoint Online. So we have things like search, the graph technology to allow us to find and consume content. And it's all, of course, social, so that there can be discussions around the video and collaboration as well. Built-in security built on top of the SharePoint platform is certainly very easy to manage. If a customer were to go take advantage of Office 365 Video, or if one of our partners here on this call were to help our customers do that, they don't really even have to have an understanding of Azure Media Services. It's just built on top of the platform, and we don't need to kind of come in and have all of that deep expertise around that platform. So here's a look at what the Office 365 portal looks like. And essentially, you can customize this somewhat using a series of channels. And so you create various channels. You can spotlight certain videos at the top, and we can make available to employees or users within the organization the most popular videos. And this is sort of powered by a little bit of intelligence built into the platform with Office Graph. But pretty familiar interface. This is the kind of thing we put in front of employees, and they can very easily interact with it and understand what they're doing. Not incredibly difficult to get people used to using it and get started. Very simple to create the channels. And so again, this is just something that looks very similar to creating the various document libraries, and effectively that's what we're doing. They're just really video channels actually behind the scenes. And we can do things to allow users to upload their own video, and the workflow of Azure Media Services kicks in to take care of some of this encoding work and some of this work to actually get the video ready for packaging and distribution. And this Office 365 video platform does very well in a mobile sense, and so the same sort of infrastructure that we deliver this out to our customers for regular browsers and PCs also is delivered into a mobile platform. In fact, these pictures here actually show it using an iPhone, so it doesn't actually end up sort of mattering as much what platform we're delivering that to. So I saw a question there pop up. Does Office 365 Video require an Azure Media Service subscription? And so as I mentioned, you don't actually have to have you don't have to use Azure Media and have to have any understanding of it. You also don't have to have an Azure Media subscription. So that actually just comes with the Office 365 subscription itself. Now, if you wanted to maybe deploy something very similar with traditional on-prem SharePoint and actually connect some of the same functions with on-prem SharePoint, well then you'd have to, as a customer, get an Azure Media subscription and do some of this integration work. We don't yet have anything like that for, I'd say, traditional SharePoint. Maybe that's something we would do in the future, I'm not sure. So here's kind of a quick look at the architecture. I won't dig into this too much further, but you can just kind of see when we're encoding video, we've got content we've uploaded into SharePoint Online. The encoding is actually passed over to Azure Media Services. Thumbnails are created there, and we're streaming directly from Azure Media Services. So that's a separate infrastructure delivering it to the users, but all built on top of the same cloud platform. And really, again, no one really has to have any kind of awareness that they're working with Azure Media Services. Okay. So that's Office 365 video. I wanted to dig into some of these topics a little bit further and talk about the architecture. But actually, before I do, let me just pause real quick and actually show you what Azure Media Services looks like. So hopefully folks on the phone here or on the link call here have worked with Microsoft Azure. So as you go into Azure, you see I've got a set of services that I can pick from over on the left. And if I go in and say I want to create an Azure Media Services account, you'll give it a name, and essentially this is the dashboard that you're brought to at the very beginning. Hey, I have an Azure Media Services account created, and what's really helpful here is it quickly takes you to some sample projects and sample code to go out and do some of the typical kind of tasks, uploading a video, encoding a video, delivering and streaming a video. And that's something important to note. You notice that the very first thing we point you to is code development. So Azure Media Services is a platform. If you take Office 365 video out of the picture here, Azure Media Services isn't a portal, a solution where you turn it on, install it for an enterprise or company, and let them get started with their own video. That's where these portals like Office 365 come into play. So if we're really just working directly with Azure Media Services, we're typically writing code in Visual Studio or the development platform of your choice. So I'm being a technology specialist that works with companies asking about video all the time and explain to them Azure Media Services. It's a huge partner opportunity, and that's why I pause here to show this. I mean, do companies know how to write the code here and understand it? It's pretty simple .NET code, but most of the companies that I talk to need help with this, and so we need partners that have expertise in this, that know how to write this code, that understand what the difference between encoding and packaging is, and know how to code these different sort of tasks. So I wanted to pause there and point that out. I can even show you some of the code here as well. But certainly from a standpoint of the dashboard, this actually is where I can go in and look at my media services account and what's actually going on with the account. Where is my content stored? And you can see along the top here, I have all those different sort of tasks that I can go in and work with. I can drive some of that right here from the portal. But again, this is just to sort of get a flavor for what you're doing and understand how it works. In the long run, we don't expect people to sort of run their portal infrastructure on top of this portal. We expect them to build and tie this into other applications or portals that they're working with. And so I could go in here and see a series of all the content that I've uploaded. If you actually go in and take a look and work with this, you'll notice that I can't necessarily do everything in this portal that the platform does. So if you actually see limitations here in the portal, when you start to dig through the documentation, you'll notice that we often say we just don't have that offered in the portal itself. We only do that programmatically. And so you can see I can come in here, and this is where I would go in from an encoding standpoint and configure the scale to how much encoding do I want. And so this is where I want to go back over to my slides and talk to you about some of the details behind some of this. I'll jump back over to slides here. Let me just see what I got. One quick question here. Okay, so let's talk about bringing content into Azure. So there's a lot of different ways to ingest content into Azure Media Services. You can upload content to Azure Storage using all the traditional methods that you might be familiar with if you've worked with Azure Storage. But I can also use the APIs or SDKs associated with Azure Media Services and do this in my code. There's a slight difference because if I'm just updating or uploading blob into Azure Storage, it's just that binary large object sitting in storage. What I really need to interact with Azure Media is an Azure Media asset. And so I have a number of different ways I can do this here. And effectively, once I've uploaded the content as an asset, it's actually now more than just a file. It may be a series of video, audio files. It may be thumbnails, metadata associated with that asset. And there can be multiple files in this. Each of those assets then has other attributes associated with it, including the locator. And so the locator is actually the URL that points users to where they're actually going to stream this media from. And the different locator sort of formats is how we actually provide that dynamic packaging that I talked about earlier. So we don't actually have any restrictions around file types in a media asset. However, the actual encoder itself doesn't necessarily support all formats. And so there are specific formats that we support from an encoding standpoint. So when we talk about Azure Media encoding, effectively there is a series of formats out there, and you can go find in our documentation to go take a look at what we support and what we accept as input and what we accept as output. The encoder is, as I mentioned earlier, you really pay for only what you use, and so we charge on sort of a per gigabyte output, and we do actually charge for this what we call reserved units, and so that's sort of how many encoders do I want to reserve for myself at any given time. And the reason I might want to encode more than one is if you just have one encoder, then the jobs you have to wait for one job to complete for the next one to start. And if I was encoding, petabytes of content, I might want to actually have these jobs run in parallel. And I can pick and choose how many reserved units I want to get this done as efficiently as I can. We then package up this content into a few different common formats, whether that be MP4 smooth streaming or HTTP live streaming, which is HLS, which is built for really the Apple platform. And we do also support something called MPEG-, which is really more of an HTML5, more modern platform for streaming. But effectively what I'm doing is creating a series of jobs, and I mentioned this sort of concept of scale. So I mentioned the fact that I can do reserved units. I also, when I'm doing encoding, can pick between different levels of encoder. So I can do the basic encoder. If I want something more high-powered, essentially meaning faster, I can go to the standard or premium encoder, and that is really all about performance. So I might only want one encoder running at a time, but I want it to be the premium encoder. I get to pick and choose this to do my encoding. I mentioned the dynamic packaging. I mean, effectively what I mean by static packaging, if I'm delivering content of various forms out to various different platforms, in the static packaging model, I really have to do this packaging and have a different file available on my streaming server out to all kinds of different platforms. We do give you the capability to do static packaging, but in Azure Media Services, as I mentioned earlier, we encode the file one time as above, but then we do that dynamic packaging into those different formats on the fly. And again, this is really saves me from the amount of content I'm storing, really, and where I pay for storage is a big advantage around this. And I mentioned streaming as well, and so once we've got the content available for streaming, I mentioned this concept of streaming reserved units, but effectively this allows me to have increments of about 200 meg. So each, if I'm going to be streaming more content, I need more bandwidth than that for larger numbers of users. This is how I'll go in and scale this up, and you just do this right in the portal, or of course you can do it programmatically in code. And I mentioned security. These are the two models of security that we offer. PlayReady is probably more targeted at a media and entertainment company, where essentially I'm providing some level of DRM around the content that I'm delivering. But certainly AES clear key encryption, effectively that's just to prevent sort of man-in-the-middle attacks and anyone finding the URL, passing the URL to someone who's not allowed to watch it. And so there's a key exchange that occurs at the beginning that ensures the content is encrypted on the wire, and the user actually receiving the stream or device can unencrypt it. And so we support both of these. And as I mentioned, the key management side of this can actually occur in the cloud as well. And we do have some companies that have their own key delivery mechanisms. But if not, we have that built into Azure and this AES clear key encryption for media. So I did talk about video player applications, so I just want to kind of reiterate that we do provide these frameworks for you to go out and build sample players, SDKs, and so forth. really, this gives you the ability to kind of build sort of custom solutions on top of this. You might want to add data collection and analytics. You might want to add additional information for the viewer related to the video. You can build these kind of players. But certainly, in many cases, this is just being delivered to the browser of choice on the user's device or a mobile device and its own sort of video playing capability. And we support all of those different solutions. We're also talking about coming out with a new HTML5 based player. We're currently in a private preview around that. And really what the goal here is to avoid that sort of browser issue, that having a different format for every browser. As many of you know, HTML5 really is that sort of cross-platform solution that allows us to deliver a sort of standard way of streaming content without sort of plugins inside of browsers and so forth. And more you're seeing video over the internet streamed over solutions like HTML5. And so we have that coming on our roadmap as well. So I'm going to actually pause here and take a look and see if we had any questions. Look like some questions around Office 365 video and pricing that Nick answered on the IM. Nick, as far as content that I wanted to cover, I think that's everything that I wanted to hit around the platform without digging too deep into some of the code and so forth. So I don't know if you want to have any other questions that we want to take, and we can certainly jump and do that.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, anybody that's on the phone, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat window now. We'll be happy to take those, and I see that there's one that just popped in, so we'll let Brian take that one.
Yeah, so the question is do we need to encode for different browsers? So you don't actually. I mean, our encoding process supports all the different streaming formats that work on all the different browser platforms, and this is where that dynamic packaging becomes very critical. We definitely encode only once, and so the encoding output essentially generates an MP4 based format, which we can then package out to all the different browsers, all the browsers that you would be asking about. So no, we don't encode separately for each one. We encode once, and then we package separately for all the different platforms. Now we do have reasons that you might encode more than once. So I might want a high-res format for a particular environment and a low-res format for another. But we do use dynamic bit rate encoding, which typically can solve most of your sort of common different networks and things like that we're streaming across.
Great, thank you for that one, Brian. And I know early on in your presentation you mentioned there's some case studies out on the Azure portal. Any particular ones that you'd encourage the group to focus on to sort of understand the power of Azure Media?
Yeah, the one that gives you the biggest picture, and I'll put a slide up here. I need to build this slide out. You can go search for what we did at the Sochi Olympics, and we have a bunch of information about how this was done. You can get into some real technical deep dives on exactly everything that we did for this. But we have a long history of working with NBC Sports and media streaming. We actually originally did the Vancouver Olympics quite a while back, and we did that with a more on-prem infrastructure. And what we learned was that was very costly to set up and essentially was temporary. So when we came to the Sochi Olympics, this is where we decided that a cloud-based solution would be the way to deliver video for the Sochi Olympics, and we had a huge success from this. There were substantial amount of users. I think the finals in the hockey game, that was I think America versus Canada at the time, was the largest online sporting event ever watched, so by the largest number of users ever. So we had to account for a huge amount of scale. We showed, I think it was almost every single event, way more than was available over a TV sort of platform. And so you can actually dig deep here and understand, how did they aggregate all the content? It was coming from a large number of feeds. Where did we do encoding? You have to do some interesting things, layering on top of this, that's sort of more for media and entertainment. But not as much about enterprise video, but you can kind of get a flavor for how this is done, and you can actually see some of the different partners that we worked with to do this. But this was a pretty exciting case study that definitely gives you a full flavor for the grand scale that we can actually do with the media services platform.
And there's another question that just popped in from Claire, and actually I was just going to ask about a similar thing, is any recommendations on networking and bandwidth for the streaming, in the upload and then the playing side of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one of the beauties of this is that if I'm streaming video, particularly from inside my company out to anyone outside, I don't have to worry about the bandwidth on my internet connection, which is often not the biggest pipe that we have in any kind of organization. So the streaming that's coming from Azure Media Services is really originating in Microsoft's Azure cloud, out to our consumers. And so it's really only limited by that streaming units concept that I talked about earlier. By default, you'd bring up one streaming unit that would get you 200 meg per second bandwidth. Now, if I want more than that, it's really just a matter of me scaling that up. We don't have limitations around that. It's really just our platform, and we use our internet pipes to push that out. So it sometimes just comes down to understanding your video content. If I'm doing this at really high resolution to thousands of users, we do have some technical guidance on our web page that can kind of help someone sort of calculate, well, what am I gonna need? But you don't really have to worry about really sort of more bandwidth. It's just more streaming capability and scaling that up.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Feel free to type them into the window. Otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and grab control back from you, Brian, here, and we'll move towards the end of the meeting. So if you want to just click that option to give me control there.
All right.
I'm gonna switch back over to the presentation for the day here. And as we do that, I just want to remind everyone, if you weren't able to join us at the beginning, we just had a quick announcement about Worldwide Partner Conference. Don't forget to sign up for that. Not that many weeks left until the prices start to go up, so now's the chance to get in there and get your passes for that. And also we talked about the Microsoft Ignite conference. So if you want to go to a technical conference with a lot of deep product group experts and really people that are going to come in from across the world and across our field and really talk about some very practical tips on how to implement, how to work with our products, that is the place to be. If you do sign up for that, please let myself know via Yammer. What we want to do is get you added to an email list that we're going to do some special sort of side events specific to partners here in the U.S. And so we want to make sure that you're on that list. So if you have people that sign up for sign up for Ignite, please reach out via Yammer, and we'll get you more information on that as we finalize our plans over the next several weeks. And with that, I'm going to just close here just a second. With a reminder that next month we're going to look at a couple of different topics. One is remote apps. So if you've not looked at Azure Remote App yet, we're going to spend some time on that in our community call. We're also going to look at some tools and some sites that are going to be available for you to do some more demoing on Azure, some sort of scripted type environments that are going to be provided by Microsoft to you as partners that you're going to be able to use with your customers. And so we want to give you a sneak preview into that and get you started on that. So be sure to join us next month for that. And just a reminder, for the community, if you're not signed up for our newsletter or our Yammer group, the links are on the screen there for how you can do that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close and just say thank you for all your attendance today, and I'm going to turn the floor back over to Kim for some closing comments.
Great, thank you, Nick. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now enabled our feedback survey for the web conference, and you can find the link in the chat feature. Please visit the link and enter your email address to access the survey. We hope that you found today's information helpful. If you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, please let us know by completing our survey. The scores are on a scale from 5 to 1, with 5 being the highest score possible. Please take a moment to provide us with your feedback and be sure to click the Submit button prior to exiting. Partners may access the web conference recording through the Worldwide Microsoft Events site in approximately 48 hours. And I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters, Nick and Brian. This concludes today's web conference. You may now disconnect.